Hello, and welcome to the Cycle Endometriosis podcast, where we will delve deep into experiences, challenges, and triumphs of those navigating a life with endometriosis. Join us as we share the stories of resilience, offer insights from experts, and foster a community of support for those affected by this often misunderstood condition. Whether you're newly diagnosed, a seasoned warrior, or seeking understanding, I hope this podcast is here to help empower you and uplift you on your journey. Tune in as we break the silence, shatter stigmas, and amplify the voices of the endometriosis community. Medical disclaimer: this podcast is not intended for the purpose of providing medical advice. All information, content, and material of this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider. Thank you so much for being here, and now on to the show. Hello, everyone. Let's welcome today's guest, Nikki, coming to us all the way from the UK. Nikki, how are you doing today?
I'm really good. It's Friday night and I'm ready for the weekend. I'm ready for it. It's been a busy week.
Yes. So we'll have a great chat and then you can get on to your weekend.
Thank you.
Well, Nikki, I like to start off tell us a little bit about yourself. Just a little background, maybe where you're from.
Yeah.
Let us know you a little.
Yeah. So I'm 33. I live just outside of London, but it's a little small town. So just outside of North London, I've got 3 girls. So they're 14, 9 and 6. So it's wild in my house most mornings, as you can imagine. Currently, I'm a mindset coach for women. So that's what I do for my job. And I coach women with hormone imbalances. It's funny, it started originally coaching mums. My daughter was born with a rare condition called a laryngeal cleft. And it was really tough. There was no information on it anywhere in the UK. It was very American based, actually. It's Boston Children's Hospital is the specialist hospital in the world for it. So there's not a lot of info anywhere. So that's how my journey began. Then COVID happened and I did a degree in psychology, which was all online. More because I've always wanted to do it. There was no space or time to do it with working. Did my degree, got into counselling, but I really just wanted to help. I wasn't sure who. And I myself have adenomyosis, endometriosis, PCOS, and I started online coaching women with adenomyosis, talking about my journey, how it was for me. And that has just grown into hormones and hormone imbalances. So now I go to companies and speak with them about inclusion and diversity, and we go to schools and speak with teen girls about how their hormones can affect their cognitive function. You know, we hear a lot about the menopause and how that affects brain fog and confusion and focus, but actually that begins from teenage years. You have a young adolescent brain will be really affected by a lack of cognitive function because their hormones are imbalanced, and it's often overlooked as just a teenage girl going through hormones and she's just a bit hormonal, but it's not the case. And that then feeds into this false narrative that a woman then produces for herself about her abilities and how she feels about herself and how the world looks at her. And it's just an ongoing battle, which then falls into how they can navigate their health journey. So that's who I coach women on: self-advocacy, feeling confident, their mindset, and just banishing any of those limiting beliefs that they've built up over time about who they are.
That is incredible. Like, I was smiling the whole time, even though I was like, I'm not smiling because you have adenoma and all the, all the things you've been through, but just what you're doing is so important and it's so impactful. And especially starting at that younger age, like you mentioned, because that's when we're all starting to try and figure this whole thing out. And I feel like the younger people can learn about this, it will help them where maybe when we were younger, we didn't have those tools because we didn't have the awareness about hormone and hormone health and all of
Yeah.
that.
It's getting the education out there for the teachers. I had a really tough school life. And I was often looked at as a naughty child, a disruptive, and I was kind of written off. From I would say about 14, 15, that was it. It was very much looked at. But actually, knowing my history now, my medical history, my hormones were absolutely chaotic. And when you look at how hormone imbalances affect the adolescent brain, there are so many girls out there who are just being written off. We hear about it all the time. She was a really good girl until she turned 14 or 15 and then she went off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
No one was looking into why. It's not just she's just hormonal. There's actually other chemical imbalances going on there that need to be looked into. And that's the start of a journey for women who then just feel terribly about themselves for the rest of their lives, and it impacts everything they do. So if we can get them young and get the education out there, we can hopefully help.
So important. Yeah, it's so important. It's funny that you even say it like that, because I always joke, a lot of my friends are starting, and you have teenagers too, like starting to have preteen and teenagers, and I'm like, oh, watch out. You just wait. I
Yeah,
remember those years of my life. But you're right. There's probably a way to make, like, normalize, like, this is normal, and you're getting this like rush of hormones at that age. You don't know what's going on. And like you said, there could be imbalances there, which are
yeah,
causing more erratic behavior.
yeah. And the hormone imbalance, it's just where your hormones are like little messengers that are shooting around your body. And when they're imbalanced, your brain can't keep up with them, and it can't manage them in the same way that it would do had those imbalances not been there. So when you're a child, a teen, and you're looking at your friends who look like they're just finding it so easy, and you can't vocalize what you're going through,
Right.
because who knows, just I feel angry and I feel sad, but I don't know why I feel like this, and I just want to curl up in a ball, and I don't want to go to school, and I hate it here, and I can't understand it. It's too much and it's overwhelming. And as long as if parents and teachers can start understanding this message as well, just having open conversations, because still we're 2024 and people aren't having these conversations with their girls.
No. Nope, you're absolutely right. That's why this is so important, and what you're doing is so important. So I want to understand, you mentioned a little bit your adolescence and struggling through it. So let's start at just kind of the beginning of you starting to discover something was off. Like, what was an indicator? How are you feeling, or did something
Yeah,
happen?
I was 14, I remember, and I didn't understand school. School was completely, I was very in the grey zone. I wasn't a naughty girl. I wasn't overly good. I wasn't overly bright, but I wasn't in the bottom sets for everything. I was in a grey zone. My hormones were all over the place. My periods were so heavy to the point where I was doubling up. I was having to wear tampons and sanitary towels and going to school as a kid. And I ran away from home when I was 14. I left school, ran away from home. And it was really awful. I think, my parents were split up and it was a really hard time. And I don't think anyone really knew what was going on. I was so hormonal, and I think I was probably awful to my mum. I ran away from home, took myself out of school, and I got to about 16, and I remembered, I'm not sure what they have over there, but we have GCSEs. So when you're 16, you sit your GCSEs, and then 17, 18, you sit your A levels, and then you go off to university. And I remember being 16 thinking, oh, I have to get back into education. I have to do something. And no school would take me because I was out of school for so long. And they're graded by, it's called Ofsted in the UK, where the grades that the kids get obviously make the school look better. No school would take me. And I had to apply for this position. It was a school actually where children who had come out of juvenile facilities were put in. So if you'd been expelled from school, which was not me. And because it wasn't me, I had to almost audition for this place. There was 2 places and there was 15 kids going for it. And I had to, it was the social services in the UK. And I rang them up. My mum had no idea I was doing this. And I was like, I need to come back to school and I don't know what to do. I need some, and I had to go to this building and sit in front of this big table of about 10 social workers and caseworkers. And I just told them everything. And there was one lady called Jo. She was fantastic. And I was told originally they didn't want to give me the spot because it wasn't where I should have been. It was for children who had criminal histories. And I didn't have any of that. I was just a girl who was lost, you know.
Yeah.
But this woman fought for me to get a space. And I managed, so within 6 months, I came out with all Bs, which is quite, I mean, which is, and I now, my daughter's just starting the process of her GCSEs. And I said to my mum the other day, I was like, she's got further than I did. And I always wish, had I had the more support that I needed, had I had that support there, if I managed to get all Bs in 6 months without, you know, where would I have been had I been there the entire time? And my school hadn't even noticed I'd left for months. They didn't even notice I wasn't there. So that's how my journey actually began. Obviously, I didn't know what was going on at all for quite a long time. But that was really when, again, I was a really good girl. I was really good at school. I was very polite. And then as soon as I turned 14, 15, I went off the rails, which was completely hormone based.
Did you go back to school after getting to this program, or did you just stay in this program?
It was just, there was only 6 months left of school. So they didn't think I was going to do anything. Because back then in the UK, you could leave school at 16. So they were very much like, do this and then you're out. Got the GCSEs. I knew I needed to do something, and I couldn't get into any colleges because I had Bs, but it was really, I'd missed the deadline to apply. So I managed to get into a college course to do hair and beauty, which wasn't really anything I wanted to do, but I just thought I'm doing something. And I actually fell pregnant with my oldest daughter just after I turned 18. So I had my 14-year-old when I was just before my 19th birthday. And I just finished that last summer. I was so heavily pregnant. And I just remember standing on the bus going to college, being massively pregnant, feeling horrendously nauseous the whole time, just trying to make sure I was like, I have to finish, which I did. I did do, I finished it. So my whole education journey, I think that's why it's so close to my heart, trying to help these girls, because I wasn't the only one. I think me picking up the phone to the social services and getting into some form of education is quite a rarity. You can fall out, and then obviously, then I had a baby at 18, and again, everyone was like, "Oh, well, that's it then. That's it." I was so determined it wasn't going to be it though. I was like, not happening. And she was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, really, had it not been for her, I don't know what I would be doing, but changed my life completely for the better. I had no pathway, and then I had her, and I immediately went straight into work, and it was very I was just so determined that she wasn't going to live that life.
Yeah, I love that. So after like some of these things happened, when did you start to like have symptoms and, you know, maybe like struggling with adenomyosis or endo or PCOS? Like, was it before pregnancy, after, or, you know,
my pregnancy was fine. My pregnancy was good. I had her just before my 19th birthday. After I had her, so when I was 19, I started bleeding so heavily, like slabs of blood clots. It was horrific. And I was, for a year, throughout my whole 19th year, I was in and out of the doctors. I went down to about 5-6 stone. I'd lost so much. I would open a cupboard and just the sight of food would make me feel nauseous, like I couldn't eat. And I remember it's really, whether people believe in this sort of thing or not, I was walking down the road with my mum and my baby, and I just said to her, I just feel like I'm going to get really ill. Like, I just feel like I'm not very well. Mm-hmm. And my mum was like, what do you mean? And I just don't know. I don't know what it is. I feel like something's wrong. And I was back and forth. And at 19, every other week they were just sending me for a blood test to check my HCG levels to see if I was pregnant. And I was like, I'm not pregnant. I'm single. I'm not
Right.
pregnant. I'm bleeding. I can't tell you, to the point of like having to like push to get these clots out,
Oh,
like giving birth. I couldn't
yeah.
hold my daughter because the pain I was in. And it got to a point, and I was still 19 at this point, where a doctor, the same doctor I used to see every other week when I'd be in there again. I remember once crawling in there, like just flooding. I couldn't even, it was like a tap. And he said, fine, we'll just send you for a scan. And I was like, it was more of a, let's send you for a scan to get rid of me, you know?
Yeah.
And I went to this hospital and I knew immediately. So she scanned me and she looked at me and she looked at my mum. She's like, give me a moment. And you know, when they're like, I'm just going to go and get a
Yeah.
doctor.
I'll be right back.
Be
You're
right
like,
back.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she went and she came back and they said, so where I live, we've got 3 hospitals that are sort of all associated to the same hospital trust. And at the time, I had my daughter with me, who was not even 1 at this point. And they were like, you have to go to this other hospital that we're attached to. You have to be seen now. And I said, well, I came here on the bus. I didn't drive. I don't drive.
Right.
But they wouldn't, they was like, we've got a hospital bus, but you can't take your daughter with you because they don't allow cars. There's like rules against, she had no car seat. She was in a pushchair. And they were like, this is really serious. You have to go now. And I was like, I don't know what you want me to do. My sister managed to come over and take us over to the hospital and they did blood tests on me. And then didn't really hear anything. Went home. They were like, made it like really urgent, then sent me home. The next day, I had my front door unlocked. My friend was coming over and she had found me halfway up the stairs and I was hemorrhaging where I was just bleeding out. And they got me to hospital and they'd found that my CA125 levels, which are what, I mean, it can be heightened with endometriosis, but it's
Hmm.
what they look for with ovarian cancer. And they were
Yes.
700 and something. Yeah. Yeah. Which
Oh
is
my
high, really
gosh.
high.
Very high, very high. I think it's
Um,
supposed to be like under, I don't know. Don't quote me,
it's
but like
uh,
30, 40, 50 or
yeah,
something,
yeah.
right?
They were over 700, and I remember the consultant. I was sat me down with my mum, and he was talking to my mum, and my mum was like, "Her," and he looked at me, looked at the notes, and saw my birthday, and looked up, and he was just like, he just shook his head and he was like, I'm treating this as ovarian cancer. I don't know if it definitely is. He went, but with your level, your numbers, and all this time, he went, so I need you to be operated on within the next week. And I was like, okay, fine. Now this is the NHS, which is bad now. Back then it wasn't as bad, but so I was like, fine, knew I needed surgery. I don't remember any of that conversation other than him saying, I think it's ovarian cancer. Nothing else. Couldn't tell you what else happened for the rest of the week.
No, you were 19 with
19,
a
yeah.
new baby.
Yeah, and we came home, and I knew I was going to be getting a phone call at some point within the week to give me a surgery date for within those 2 weeks. Nothing happened. 2 weeks came and went, no phone call. And I rang his receptionist, he's like a secretary, and she said, he does deal with oncology patients and cancer patients. And I said, I know, he's treating me as one. And she went, oh. And he'd stuck a red sticker on my information on my notes. And she said, oh, he sticks a red sticker on cancer patients. And I just assumed because of your age, he'd put it on the wrong one. So I took it off. So his secretary had removed this girl needs surgery because she just assumed it was wrong because of my age. And that's so common. It's really shocking. But so many women are told, you're too young. You're far too young. That won't be you. You're too young. So we got a surgery date. And I just remember saying to him, he said to me, I don't know what I'm going to find. You've got a tumor on your left ovary that had twisted. It was almost had like a lifeline off my ovary. So it wasn't actually attached to the ovary itself. It was off the ovary and it had twisted the ovary. So the ovary was already dead. And the tumor kept attaching to other organs and then bursting. That's what and that's what all the bleeding was, and it was just a mess. And he said to me, I don't know what I'm going to find. we might have to do a full hysterectomy. I don't know what's going to happen. And I just remember begging him, like, please, I want more children. Like, do not take it all out. Please don't. And my mum was like, if he has to take it out, let him take it out, you know. And he was like, you've got one baby. My goal is I'm going to keep you alive for your baby. So if I have to take it all out, I'm going to take it all out.
Oh my God.
After the surgery, I woke up and it was cancerous within the tumour, but it hadn't spread anywhere. How is like a miracle. They removed the ovary, the left ovary, and I had lots of, all my organs basically stuck together. He was like, you're covered in endometriosis. They hadn't found the adenomyosis at this point, but he was like, you've got PCOS, you're covered in endo. We removed as much as we can, but your organs are stuck together. It's just a bit of a mess in there. Probably won't have more children. And I just, again, I mean, I was on so many painkillers. All I remember was waking up and having the most horrific pain in my shoulders. And this is
The gas.
Well, I had no idea, and I said, "Oh my God, my shoulders hurt, might really hurt." And it's weird. That's my only memory of, again, that whole week. And bless my sister. My sister lives in Utah now, but so I never see her anymore. But at the time, you know, it's like going to the toilet or just sitting up and sitting down.
Yeah.
So that was.
So that was when you were 19.
Yeah.
They found endo, PCOS, and a cancerous tumor that hadn't spread.
But so my mum's mum died of uterine cancer. So my mum's always been really just worried about the whole thing. She's up to my mum, she'd be like, have a full hysterectomy. So that was the start of my journey. And then I met my now partner, and we've had 8 miscarriages in between. That was 2010, and it's now 2024. 8 miscarriages. We've got 2 lovely little girls who I just can't believe I've even managed to have them, to be honest. So I know how incredibly lucky I am for them to be here. But again, with every miscarriage, they were never investigated. It was very much the first miscarriage I had. They brought me in and they were like, yeah, you've miscarried, your HCG levels have gone down. And they were quite nice about it. The second one, I went to the hospital. I mean, it was a waiting room, which pregnant women were waiting also to be scanned. So, you know, and the nurse opened the door and went, Nikki? And I went, oh, yeah, that's me. And she went, yeah, your HCG levels have dropped. You've lost it. Sorry. Next. Just like that. And I must have been maybe 22 at this point. I was really young. And I remember at that point, every other miscarriage I had, I just didn't, what's the point? I was like, I'm not going in because I know what's going on. And it almost became, oh, we're pregnant. Oh, I'm bleeding. It was very much like that. And I was always waiting. My
how
second.
was your pain? Like, how were you in between these? Like, were you having painful cycles or like bowel symptoms or any other some of the more common symptoms of endo, or no?
Not necessarily. I mean, my periods were always all over the place. I couldn't tell you what my cycle was. There was no let's try, because I was like, I don't know. I don't know when.
Right. But they were always really heavy too.
Oh,
but then again, you didn't know you had adeno at that point.
And they were incredibly heavy, but then I could go months with nothing. And it was just, I mean, those sort of, I'd say 10 years I was just mentally so down. I'm
sure.
It was just, it was a real, I remember before I got pregnant with my youngest, that's when I found out I had adenomyosis. So what was I, 26 maybe, I'd like to say, maybe 26, maybe 28. And I was really bleeding and I was up, I had to drive and my car seat was just, there was no stopping it. It didn't matter what I was doing.
Right.
And I rang the doctors. I was like a gynecology surgery. And I rang them and I said, I'm in the car park. I can't move. And she was like, well, you're going to be late for your appointment. And if you're late, you just won't get booked back in. And I said, I physically can't move. I said, I'm bleeding. So it's like a tap. I can't even tell you. There's no other way to describe it. It's like someone's turned the tap on at full blast and it's just happening. And she was like, no, you have to come in. So I went in, trail of blood behind me, and my mum had a tea towel and was like cleaning the floor behind
Oh
me.
my gosh.
And they did the scan, and she was like, well, that's adenomyosis, 100%. Um, and then it was, no one was like, that was it. It was like, there you go, you've got adenomyosis. Okay, what does that mean? Like,
Right, right.
um, and nothing was ever done. And then when I fell pregnant, quite quickly after that, probably about 3 or 4 months after that, with my youngest daughter, and she was a twin. And I started bleeding again, and I thought, oh, okay. And I actually said to I was like, I'm done now. I can't do this. I'm done. Like, we've got two. Let's stop. But I'm just no more. And I went in for the scan, and it was early. It was like 5 weeks, and they're like, you probably are losing it. Come back in 2 weeks. And when I went back, they saw 2 sacs, but only one baby in one of them. So I'd lost one, and there she was. And that was just like a little miracle to me, to be honest. And yeah, it was because I'd had my pregnancy with her. Any sort of traction I'd had with the endo or adeno with the previous appointments had got lost, and I had to start all over again.
Right, right.
And I think that's the hardest part for many women, is just repeating the story, just going
Yeah.
back, with someone new. And we
Yes.
had, I remember going in for a scan about a year and a half ago, not long ago, and they did a scan, and they were like, "Oh, there's no adenomyosis there. There's a little bit of endometriosis." And I was like, "Okay." And they said, "I don't think," and it was just someone who
Yeah.
hadn't seen it, who wasn't
And
qualified enough.
sometimes it doesn't show up on any scans.
Yeah,
I know multiple people have had a lot of scans, and then when they had surgery, they found a crazy amount of endo
yeah,
and adeno.
exactly. And I think it's really disheartening when you are in so much pain, and it takes a lot to go and see a doctor, because
Yes.
it's such a private, personal, and you're constantly told, well, just lose some weight. It can't be that bad. It's just this, that, and
Change
the
your
other.
diet. Yeah,
You
like
change your
just
diet. Yeah. And so I like the last, I've actually filmed it. I was going to upload it. It's, I had to have a hysteroscopy. I didn't obviously film it. I just filmed me.
right, right.
No one wants to see that. And I had a hysteroscopy, and they were doing some investigations, and it was basically so we can, okay, let's look at what we're going to do. Are we going to do a full hysterectomy, which my GP wanted me to do,
Mhm.
um and or a laparoscopy? And basically this consultant sat me down and just said, look, I've spoken with the old surgeon who did my stuff when I was 19,
Mhm.
and like looking at all your MRIs and everything we know now, he was like, if we do any kind of surgery on you, you will have to have a coloscopy back. We'll have to remove some of your bowel. And I was like, oh, the lady who did the scan said there wasn't a lot of endo. And he was like, well, I don't know what she was looking at, because it's everywhere. It's all over my bowels, and it's just, I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and he was telling me like everything's so stuck together. He was like, it will cause more harm trying to remove some of that endo than it will if we can just leave it and just figure out how we can manage your PCOS symptoms, for instance. Or so I've kind of been left now of let's handle your PCOS, let's get that manageable, and then we'll figure it all out after that. So again, it's still a limbo situation.
Oh, Nikki, I'm sorry. I mean, it's just been a lot and a roller coaster, and there is so much help out there. Like maybe I don't know if this doctor's an endo specialist or what the specialists look like in the UK, but I would highly recommend, and for anyone listening, always trying to find someone who specializes in it, just
Yeah,
because there's still such a lack of education around all three of those
yeah.
things that you've discussed, right? So, um, yeah, have they ever recommended any other like treatment throughout this
No.
like 10 years of
No. In the UK, it's very much like take the contraceptive pill or have the
yeah,
coil,
and that's
and
it.
lose some weight. That
Yeah.
is it. It's very difficult to get anything else.
I've heard that before with other people on the show. It's very like this is it. These are
It
the
is, yeah.
solutions.
There's not even any support. For instance, having a miscarriage, even once, but over and over again, there's no support, and this is why I started what I do as well, because that mindset, that trauma has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for women to paint on a smile and, okay, I've got my other children to look after and I've got work to do and I've got a house to tidy and I've got this, that, and the other. Never has it ever been offered any kind of therapy. You get excited about these babies and then they're not there. And it's a shambles, to be honest. And it's
Yeah.
really difficult. And I think that's why it's so important that we have people doing this and talking about it and creating a safe space for women. I did an article and it was on adenomyosis, and it was really informative, and I told them all the facts and figures and how it affects people and the symptoms, and they didn't use any of that. They used the headline, woman changes tampon every 20 minutes. And then the comments, some from women were like, this is so disgusting, who cares about her
Oh yeah.
toilet habits? And I was thinking, this is not, and it's all a joke to people, and it's ruining lives. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yes.
the amount of women that I speak to who have found themselves in a place, like really dark place, because they are just done with the agony.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most incredibly painful. You feel like you're going into labor, and it's people don't talk about that.
And it's shoved under the rug so often, and the
Always.
more we talk about it, it's so normalized that this is just what you have to live with, and you don't. There are very skilled doctors out there. There's other options to get the proper treatment for, if excision surgery really helped me, other people have had other things help them, but it definitely changed my life, and
Yeah.
I did have to have a portion of my bowel removed because of endo. But I'm so glad that they found it and I was able to, because this is an anadeno. Like, you can get anemic. Can't you be anemic from losing all that? I mean,
Always. Yeah.
there's other risk factors, and these are very, very serious conditions, serious disease, and it affects your every single waking minute of your life. And nothing is more frustrating than exactly like what you're saying, where it's just kind of shoved off.
Always. And you're always made to feel, I think makes women feel in the end that everyone else around me is making out like I'm being dramatic. So I need to just be quiet and I need to sit here and be in this pain, and it's fine and I'm just going to get on with it. And it's so wrong, because I guarantee you, so many women that you pass in the street or on the school playground or that you're speaking with at work are probably going through similar things, but nobody talks about it because they're always told it's fine. This is normal. It's so abnormal. It's not normal.
It is not normal. And even so many more women are speaking about menopause and perimenopause that was never spoken out about
Yeah.
before. I mean, I think it's just starting to be spoken about now, like 2023, 2024. So many years, all of these women were suffering, going through all of these symptoms that they maybe could have had HRT, and it would have helped them like at least offset the symptoms a little bit. So yeah, I think it's just in general, like you said, it's a kind of deal with it situation. And I think our generation is like, no, this isn't right. And we're
Yeah.
fighting back and we're advocating for ourselves and we're getting the word out there. And you have a podcast and I have a podcast, and you're out there coaching people to help them find their voice, because for so long, from a young age, let's just say from like 12 or 13 or 14, if people are struggling with these things, are told it's normal and just deal with it. And now you're in your 20s or 30s, or however old you are, how are you going to have the confidence when you've been told it's normal your whole
Yeah.
life?
And it's when you build up that courage to go and see a medical professional and they tell you, oh, you're fine, you're fine. And it's, you could be one level below what serious PCOS it looks like, for instance. Now, but you're fine.
Yeah.
And it baffles me that we're now having to reignite almost like a suffragette moment to try and bring everyone together. And it's the same for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. That's only
Yes.
just now getting the traction that it needed. And how many women over the generations were sent into special homes because they were crazy and and it wasn't the case at all. They had like a mental health condition, and you hear about these awful stories of women ending their lives because they can't get the help, and it's for 2 weeks of the month. And it's really tragic. It's awful, and we need to get away from this. Oh, she's just a bit hormonal situation. It's a joke. People have jokes about it. Oh, is it the time of the month? People laugh about it, and that needs to change.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And even the strongest of advocates, like you, me, we know we can go into the doctor armed. I can't tell you how many times I've cried leaving a doctor's office, even though I feel so confident going in and I know what I'm going to say and I know more than they do. And just the way that they have treated me, not all of them, there's some incredible doctors out there. And I'm like, I can't believe, I mean, this just even happened to me recently a couple weeks ago. I also have Hashimoto's, thyroid disease. And I have a woman doctor, and I was like, something's off. I've been having joint pain. Like, I'm gaining weight. I haven't felt good. I could sleep at any point in the day. And she was like, well, if you just eat an extra apple every day, you could gain 10 pounds in a year. And then my blood work came back. They didn't even call me. They just called me in a new prescription for my thyroid medication. And my thyroid was functioning at like 0.6%. So like almost like 60% instead of anywhere near 100% with my medication that I was taking. So I had already taken it that day. So if I hadn't taken it, it would be probably below 50%. And I just wanted to be like, you didn't believe me. I trusted my intuition, which I'm sure is something we're about to talk about. And then the blood work came back and like, how is this still happening? It's 2024. Like, listen to what I'm saying. Like, I am telling you something is wrong. Something is wrong.
This is the problem. There are so many, I get it all the time. Well, you're not a doctor. Well, that's fine. But you find me a doctor that knows more on adenomyosis. That is just a general doctor that you're going to come face it because you have to face them to get to the specialists. You find me one that knows what it is more than I do, and I'll applaud them because guarantee they don't.
No, because you've spent time and researched and you know your own body. So talk to me a little bit about, so this, this journey has pushed you into a new career and you're now helping other people. So tell us a little bit about that and what you do, and I don't know how people can find you if they're interested in following what you're talking about. Do you mostly focus on adenomyosis? Just tell us a little bit.
So I focus on, to be honest, a lot of my clients come from I have clients with ADHD, for instance, or I have so initially when I started, like I spoke about earlier, when I began, I was actually helping other parents whose children had rare conditions that weren't getting listened to. So my daughter was born with a hole in her larynx. So whenever she would swallow anything, it would go into her lungs and in her stomach. And she was very poorly. No one was listening to me. Even my own family were like, you're crazy. Like, everyone's saying she's fine. I was like, this is my third baby. This baby is not fine. I promise you now. And she was finally, we were in and out of hospital her whole life. And then when it was the day before her second birthday, she was in Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in London. And I'd written the letters, and it's hard to get into this. And I'd written the letters. I found the consultant and I wrote her a letter, and I gave her every bit of my daughter's, medical history. And I said, look, this is what I think is going on with her. Please come and talk to us. Please see us. And now this doctor actually worked at Boston's Children's Hospital, because they specialised in laryngeal clefts. And within 2 weeks, we were in and had a surgery date. it was like that. And this was peak COVID. It was June 2020. So it
Wow.
was like, it was almost unheard of to get surgery at that point in time. And I just remember, well, you know, the day they told me, you were right, this is what it is. And, you know, she will always have effects from that. She's on a lot of medication still. She's 6, but she'll always be on medication for it. She's always going to suffer really badly with asthma. Her breathing, you know, if she gets a chest infection, likely will turn to pneumonia. That will always be a forever thing. But the day they said to me, yes, we found it, we found something, I just remember feeling like, thank God I pushed and pushed. Had I been a first time mum, I probably wouldn't have pushed as hard as I did. And actually, the truth of the matter is, she probably wouldn't be here now. She stopped breathing when she was 4 months old and was resuscitated multiple times on the way to the hospital. And I remember saying to the doctor, I know you are getting fed up of me. Like, but you have to listen to me. I was like, something is wrong. And I had this one fantastic doctor, and he pulled me out of the room. And he said, what do you do for a living? And I was like, well, I work in IT. You know. And he said, okay, why do you think you know better than I do as a paediatrician? And I said, I'm her mum. I know. And he said, okay, great answer. And he was like, I will always listen. You've got a mum sitting here in front of me. And he had all these student doctors with him. And he said to them, I want you to all remember, if you ever have a mum standing in front of you shouting, you are wrong, look again, look again. Like, just look again. Just one more look, one more listen, one more. It doesn't hurt anyone. And they were this when she was about 4 months old, and they had a student doctor who listened to her breathing, and he was like, "Oh, I can hear a whooshing noise," which no one else had heard. And as soon as he heard that, they'd rushed her through, and they did all this stuff, and that was the beginning of our journey to finally get answers. And I just felt a great sense of pride. I was like, thank God I ignored everyone saying I was nuts, because it was all very much like, maybe you've got postnatal depression, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And I created this group on Facebook for this condition, and I started a WhatsApp channel, and I was on Zoom calls once a week, and it was very easy breezy, you know, how have you been, what's going on? And then it turned into are more helpful. So I put sheets together of what to take with you on long stay hospital trips, and it was really like your own sheets from home, because children want to have the smell of them their own home. It was really little silly things, and a fact sheet. So if you're going into the doctors and your child is constantly breathing like this, and there were certain things, like I did a post, and it was how to give a child Calpol. And it went viral. A baby magazine picked it up, and it was like 120,000 shares within the first 2 hours. And it was to put, so you've got a baby bottle, and if you syringe their medication into the teat of the bottle when they're little babies, it's so simple. And I thought everyone knew it, but they didn't at the time. They would just suck it like they thought it was milk or something.
Yeah.
Just little things like this. And I loved that. I loved helping everyone. And I was doing my degree in psychology, and I thought, well, who am I going to help? Well, I wish I had somebody helping me to advocate for my own health, or advocate for my child's health, or all of this stuff, and help me manage my mental load, because I would, you know, it's all well and good, you look really strong, but then there are moments, washing up, I was doing the washing up, and I felt like a train had just hit me in the chest, and I just broke down. And it was because I'd pent up all this emotion and I hadn't dealt with it. So I help women who are at multiple stages of their lives, whether they are trying to fight for a diagnosis for any condition, really. I talk a lot about hormones, because I find that, find me a woman that isn't affected by her hormones in any way, in a negative fashion, you know. And women are stuck in careers that they hate, not getting promotions, not being able to move forward. So I help these women by guiding them, helping them understand what they're going through, helping them understand their mindsets, and understanding how they got there. Okay, this causes your cognitive function with your memory to be delayed, or you know, everyone's different. I'm usually on Instagram all the time. Actually, I say usually, it's all the time. So at Nikki Alford, at Nikki Alford Coaching. So you can find me on that, but it's NIKKIALLFORD coaching. And I just talk openly on there. I'm a very much an open book, as you can probably hear. I talk about my experiences, and yeah, I've just began a new company now with a lovely girl called Annie, who she coaches neurodiverse women. She's dyslexic and has ADHD, and we talk about all these things that women are dealing with that are being underplayed, and women are having to just get on with their lives. And it's had a huge negative effect on them. So that's actually, it's called the I just don't know ... because it's just, what are your I just don't know moments? Well, I just don't know why I'm bleeding this heavily, and I just don't know why I can't stop crying, and I just don't know what I find this so hard. So yeah, it's really
incredible.
exciting.
I
Really
mean,
exciting.
it's really exciting, and you've taken a lot of these very challenging things and you've turned it into something incredible to help other people not struggle or suffer, which is just absolutely incredible. You were meant to do this.
I feel like it's the first time in my life I actually feel like I'm finally where I'm meant to be. Everything's aligned, and I love it. It doesn't feel, when you're sitting there working and putting together. So every client I have goes on a 12-week program, like a one-to-one program, or they can join group sessions. But my one-to-one clients, and sitting there till midnight, 1 a.m. putting together this client, it doesn't feel like work because I just love it. And seeing the changes in these women is just magical, when you can see somebody who comes to you broken and they walk out the other side of it just with so much light around them, and it just makes you feel like, oh God, I'm doing something right.
It's absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful to meet you, and I'll link everything in the show notes so people can find you that way. And is there anything you want to add for endo patients who are listening, adeno patients who are listening, any like tips or something you want to give before we wrap up?
My biggest tip, if you're going into any sort of however far you are in your journey, education is key. Make sure you're educated in what you're talking about. Make sure you're aware. You have to be have your history with you. It's so simple. Be educated in what you're talking about. Make sure you have notes of every medication you've been on, every time that you've seen somebody, what procedures you've had, because they will question you on everything. They will ask you, and if you will get brushed aside. But if you can go in there and say, I've had this coil, it made me feel horrendous. My mental health dropped dramatically and I was horrendously angry. I don't want that contraception because of this. I've had laparoscopies, or if you can go in there, lay it all out on the table, because they won't do that work for you. And you can advocate for yourself already just by doing that. You will naturally feel more confident. You'll be able to speak more fluently. It's very difficult when you're trying to get your words out and record everything. And now, I used to take a notepad, but I just record it on my phone now, because I still will go and sit in a doctor's surgery, have a conversation, and I'll forget everything that was said to me. Have it recorded, write down notes. No good doctor will turn around and say to you, no, you're not writing notes in here. You have to be able to go back and understand what's been said to you. And one key thing I always tell people is never leave that appointment without a follow-up or some form of motion. What are you giving me now to help with my symptoms? Right now to fix me? That's fantastic. You're giving me this medication, but what next? What's the next appointment? What's the future plan? Always make sure there's a next step booked in that day.
That's great advice. And yes, recording appointments, because like you said, you don't remember. If you hear something when you're like when you were 19, you have cancer, you're not going to remember anything else that is said after that,
No.
because you're just absorbing something that is incredibly challenging to hear. So I totally agree. And if any doctor says no, then I agree. That's very odd. It would be very odd for them to say no. And then I know a lot of people, you just reminded me this, they have a really hard time going to new doctors or consultants and explaining their story. And my advice to them was make a YouTube video that is private to you, And if repeating the story over and over again is very challenging for you, show them the video and be like, I don't want to relive this every single time, but here's a video. And if they're really,
Yeah, I love that.
a good doctor, they should understand that you've been through a lot, and it's challenging to relive it every single time you have to tell all your history over and over and over again.
I love that idea. That's brilliant. I'm going to steal it.
Yeah, take it, please pass it on, help people. You can even just have a video on, you don't have to even make it YouTube, but you could have it on your phone. It's just something. I like it on YouTube because then you can send the link like in the portal or something before
Brilliant.
you go. But there's ways to make it so you don't have to continuously repeat your story. And so, yeah, I thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else we
Thank you
didn't
for having me.
discuss? Yeah, anything else you want to chat?
Well, no. So anyone who comes on to the page, we are offering, so me and Annie are offering 60% off of a 12-week workshop that we're doing for women for self-advocacy. So it's a huge chunk off. But yeah, we're offering that. And there are some free workshops as well. There's a 2-hour free workshop coming up. So if anyone wants to just hear about self-advocacy and just those beginner steps, head over to, that's at I Just Don't Know Official. And
Perfect. And we'll link
it
in the show notes as well. I'll get all the details, and thank you for offering that and having free programs, because that's so important too. Because
Definitely.
as we all know, being chronically ill is chronically expensive.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm there with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your story and for all the hard work you're doing.
Pleasure. Thank you.